Hello and welcome to Module 1 of the Shapes of Grief training programme. I'm Liz Gleeson, grief psychotherapist, and I'm delighted that you're here. It means you've either purchased the programme or you're considering purchasing. So I just wanted to give you a very brief overview of Module 1 and what to expect. Please don't skip over this module. There is so much really valuable insight and learning here. As in any field, it's so important to know whose shoulders we're standing on. And certainly in grief research, we are standing on the shoulders of giants. There's some amazing people who have come before us who have studied grief, developed theories on it, rejected those theories after a period of time. And, that has been taken up and evolved by the next theorist. So to understand where we're coming from, who and what has gone before us is really essential to getting a good grounding on understanding the theories and models of grief. I've had the immense pleasure of interviewing Dr. Irvin Yalom. Dr. Yalom is a psychotherapist, an eminent psychotherapist and psychiatrist who has been writing for those of us in the psychotherapy profession for years. I'm sure many of you know his name. But what was really interesting about the interview was his acknowledgement that when his wife died, he realized he actually really did not understand fully what it means to grieve profoundly. So that was really interesting to me, someone who's followed Dr. Yalom for years, because we can assume that people have all this knowledge on a range of fields, but grief really is a field unto itself. And any of us working in the field of grief really need to be trained. It's absolutely essential because harm can be done to the people we support if we are not coming from a place of wisdom, knowledge, and certainly compassion. So what this module will offer you is a really good grounding on grief theories and grief models, give you a really good platform from which to approach the rest of the program. So I'll be speaking with Dr. George Bonanno, who has worked in the area of grief research for decades at this point. And it's really interesting. We talk about why some people are okay after a profound loss and why others need significant support. So what are the factors that determine how we grieve? What does the research tell us about how we grieve and why we grieve? What is the profile of the person who can grieve and integrate their grief over time? And what is the profile of the person who may get stuck with profound loss for decades? So really interesting discussion there, all based on the research from Dr. George Bonanno. I'll also speak with Dr. Colin Murray-Parkes, the grandfather of grief theory, who worked with Colin Bowlby on attachment theory many years ago, and who has also been present at many community disasters, such as the Southeast Asian tsunami, the Rwandan genocide, and 9/11 in the States. So really interesting talk with Dr. Colin Murray-Parkes about his work in the past. I speak with Dr. Robert Niemeyer about his background and how he came to work in the field of grief and loss, and also the importance of narrative therapy, telling our story over and over, and how meaning making is essential in the integration of grief. I also speak with Dr. John Mills, who is an eminent professor in Canada and who has studied Freud. And we look at the history of grief and loss and how it was first spoken about and written about by the famous Freud. So that's also a really, really interesting discussion. There's a presentation from Dr. Margaret Strebe, who developed the dual process model along with Henk Schutt. And she talks us through what her research has shown us about grief and loss and why the dual process model is an essential model for us to understand when we're supporting people who are grieving. I also speak with Dr. Dennis Klaas, who is one of 3 authors of the book Continuing Bonds, Klaas, Nickman, and Silverman, and how we used to think that grief was something that we had to move on from or get over. But through his research, he realized that actually when someone we love dies, the last thing we want is to forget them or get over them or move on. We instead need to find new ways of relating to them, new ways of continuing a bond with them. So they're just some of the people you'll meet in Module 1. Please don't skip over it. It's really essential listening, and I hope you enjoy it, and see you in Module 2.